You like dragons? Imagine dragging these nuts across your forehead.
Welcome to the motherfucking lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It would seem that unbeaten up-and-comer of Kazakhstan, Balausa Muzdiman, is set to return to action towards the end of this month on the 25th, a day that's set to be a very busy day in the sport of boxing when Joshua versus Prenga is supposed to be going down, Spence versus Zhu, and the ring return of Balausa Muzdiman, who sports an unblemished record of 9 wins with no losses and no draws, 7 recorded knockouts, 11 months out from her last outing. It's been a little while since Balausa Muzdiman's last fight in September of the previous year opposite the ring Mamta Singh, who she stopped in the 4th round of a contest scheduled for 10. She was actually pretty productive in the previous year, fighting 3 times, once in April, again in June, then again in September. All things considered, she's been keeping a nice steady schedule of fights for a fighter that's not with a major promotional outfit, best described as Megan Fox meets Gennady Golovkin. To see her in action, you'll notice a touch of Triple G, as she is a native of Kazakhstan, the same as Gennady Golovkin, but she's got the budding good looks of a prime Megan Fox. She really is quite the looker, hovering at or around 115, 118. This upcoming fight she's about to have is a super flyweight contest, where Natalie Delgado reigns as WBA champion. Adelaida Ruiz, she's got the WBC. Irma Garcia, she's got the IBF. And Mizuki Hiruta, she's got the WBO. That is where this upcoming contest is set to take place for what is Balausa Muzdiman's 10th professional fight. Her opponent, supposed to be on the undercard of an Akhmedov promotion. Akhmedov Promotions does a lot of shows in that region of Kazakhstan. But I tried to look up this girl that she's supposed to be fighting, and I couldn't turn up any results. With the fight not yet being registered on BoxRec, I couldn't find out more about her opponent, who's she going to be fighting, who specifically, and what kind of record they have, what can they do. Balausa, I've seen in action. Balausa, I already know. The fear with Balausa Muzdiman is that her boxing career will continue to fly under the radar because she's limiting herself to fighting in that region of the world, which isn't one of the big boxing markets, like what we saw with her countrywoman, Firuza Sharapova, another very skillful Kazakh fighter that mostly fought in Kazakhstan, and as a result, nobody really knew her. So by the time that she actually gets a shot at Katie Taylor, people were mostly unfamiliar with this fighter, but you could see right away that she's well-schooled, that she was very good. And it's the same with Balausa Muzdiman. The women's super flyweight division is now getting more coverage, more exposure than it ever did in previous eras of boxing. There's more money flowing through it via a major promotional outfit like MVP. They have a few prized stallions at that weight, as well as the best in show, Mizuki Hiruta. She's making a name for herself. She's getting a lot of attention, and that is where this contest is set to take place. But until Balausa Muzdiman pairs up with a promoter from this part of the world, or just one of the big boxing markets like the UK or the US, she can't just stay there. I think there also needs to be a more concentrated effort for Balausa Muzdiman to fight in title eliminators for one of the 4 alphabet titles. She can make a name for herself that way as well, fighting the champions at this weight, getting ready to. Otherwise, she's just going to stay an obscure figure, like her countrywoman, Firuza Sharapova, who was very skilled. And you could see that right away, but for most of her career, nobody knew the woman. Nobody knew who she was. And so Balausa is set to return to action towards the end of this month, and we'll find out what we can about her opponent, who she's going to be fighting, and what she's going to be dealing with as the fight date approaches. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, a continuation to a story we talked about in a previous video, the PBC and DAZN announcement is imminent. I think they're supposed to be making an official announcement tomorrow for what is a multi-cast, multi-year deal that will see PBC shows distributed on the DAZN platform, though apparently Gervonta Davis will not be included in the DAZN deal. Sources indicate that events headlined by Tank are not part of the agreement. Those bouts would require separate negotiations if they are added to DAZN's schedule. Why would they want to keep his events separate from everybody else's? I've got a few ideas. In many ways, the divide has already been bridged between the PBC and DAZN. I mean, Floyd Mayweather's exhibition with Deji landed on the DAZN platform, and in more recent years, with fights like Garcia versus Barrios and Benavidez versus Zurdo, those were multicast fights, distributed on both the Amazon Prime and DAZN platforms. So we've already seen the structure, what this partnership is going to look like. I think the only real added benefit is if DAZN puts up a little bit of money for PBC to do some regular shows, some non-pay-per-view events, because since landing on the Amazon Prime platform, they've done pay-per-views almost exclusively. So what this arrangement between them and DAZN could result in are more cross-promotional fights between their stable of fighters and everybody else's. Brandon Figueroa, Gary Antoine Russell,
because they've still got a couple of belt holders over there.
Sebastian Fundora, Arislandi Lara. Theoretically, this arrangement could result in negotiations for a Virgil Ortiz versus Sebastian Fundora fight, because Virgil's got the interim title and Sebastian's got the full one, theoretically. Though why would Gervonta Davis not come as part of that deal? And I think it's because they don't want transparency when it comes to Gervonta. They want to maintain the illusion that he's got all this drawing power and all of this leverage over everybody else, that they want to negotiate his fights separately on a fight-by-fight basis, which I suppose doesn't matter anyway, because the deal is set to go into effect this month with Spence versus Zoo, whereas Gervonta isn't set to return till next year. There's been a lot of rumors and rumblings about Gervonta Davis's ring return, which we initially thought would be in the fall and winter months. As it turns out, he's not coming back till next year. So all this hullabaloo about his ring return, his next fight, potential talks for a Devin Haney showdown, it's all much ado about nothing, because this guy isn't coming back yet anyway. Him not being part of the deal?
That could change.
We're at the midway point of this calendar year. In all the weeks and months it's going to take for Gervonta Davis to return to the ring, if he ever does, the arrangement could change to where his fights end up landing on DAZN with all the other PBC pay-per-views, because that's what it's about.
Most of what the PBC does these days are pay-per-views, almost exclusively in DAZN.
They're in the market for pay-per-views to spruce up their ultimate tier. DAZN has fast become the home of global boxing, so it's only right that PBC put their differences aside and start working with them, because they need a distributor like DAZN.
Amazon doesn't really advertise their content. They don't really give a damn about the PBC shows. They don't really push them and promote them the way that DAZN could.
And you tell yourself that, well, Amazon has many more subscribers worldwide than DAZN does. But how many of those subscribers are actually boxing fans?
DAZN is said to host in the neighborhood of 20 million subscribers,
which doesn't seem like a lot next to a giant platform like Amazon Prime and all of their subscribers. But how many of their subscribers are boxing fans? With the DAZN subs, you don't have to worry about them not being boxing fans, because you know that they are. You know that's what they're there for. So it could be beneficial. The stuff about Gervonta Davis, I think, could change within the next 6 or 7 months, or however long it takes for Gervonta Davis to return to action, as the PBC and DAZN really sink their teeth into this partnership that kicks off with the Zoo versus Spence card later this month. By the time Gervonta comes back, they might have it set up where his fights land on DAZN also. So I wouldn't give it too much thought right now.
It would seem that DAZN has managed to outlast their competitors in Fox and Showtime and ESPN as it pertains to boxing. Those were the competing platforms, and DAZN has managed to stay in the sport, but not just stay in the sport, corner that market.
Outlast them. Boxing insider Rick Lacier reacted to the story by saying, "Congrats to DAZN on getting all the traditional major boxing promoters worldwide on one platform. If you call yourself a boxing fan and you don't subscribe to DAZN, call yourself something else. Cheap. Support one great platform. Boxing 365 days a year on DAZN. Somewhat jubilant tone as it pertains to the DAZN platform, but as it pertains to the PBC, them specifically, Rick said, boxing media types are labeling the PBC DAZN deal as being historic, when in reality, the only historic thing about PBC is the amount of money they've lost since its 2015 inception, including Stephen Waddle and Reed, out of $925 million per federally required SEC filings. Now that's historic, and that's not even counting how much of their broadcast partners' money they fucked off on NBC, on Fox, on Showtime. They burnt through a lot of cash just to end up on the same platform as everybody else. Because they thought they could be an island. What if I told you that the PBC was doomed to fail from its inception, from the very beginning, because it was Al Heyman's intention to freeze out Golden Boy, to freeze out Top Rank. Originally, he didn't want anything to do with them. He thought that with the 200 or so fighters he stole from Golden Boy, he had enough right there that he would never need to deal with Golden Boy or Top Rank. As it turns out, the biggest pay-per-views the PBC have ever done, the most commercially successful fights they've put on, have all involved fighters that were developed by Golden Boy and Top Rank. Boxing's existing infrastructure does not allow for an island to form. To be successful, you can't really stay inside a bubble. It doesn't work like that. So if it was Al Heyman's original intention to cut himself off from everybody else, then this thing was doomed to fail from the very beginning. And that's what they've done. They've failed. Categorically, they have. What's the PBC as a company valued at in 2026? What about their stable? What's the strength of their stable in 2026? Because it's not what it was in previous years. Now they're just trying to keep their heads above water, doing what they have to do to survive, and it's smart. But it is out of desperation, because initially, that's not what their aim was, to pair up with everybody else and have to work with everybody else. And there is another side to the coin, another angle of this landmark deal. You often hear it said that you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. All of Zuffa Boxing's competitors have now converged on one platform. Some would call that a good thing. Where I would call that a byproduct of dwindling interest for boxing content in the United States that used to be readily available via American broadcasters. They've decided there's just not enough of an ROI when it comes to broadcasting boxing, investing in boxing. So a lot of these promotional outfits weren't left with much of a choice but to migrate over to DAZN. Top Rank didn't initially want to do that. And the PBC held out as long as they could. So when you have this many major promotional outfits all converging on one platform, what you essentially have is all your eggs in one basket. What should happen if something happens to that platform, to that basket, when there's just not enough money coming in to maintain the operational costs of working with this many promotional outfits? If there are not enough subscriptions coming in fast enough to maintain, what happens to the basket? What happens? I do think it's convenient for the hardcore boxing fan to get this much boxing from one provider, but it's not like it's not at an additional cost, because it is. We're talking about more pay-per-views here. Don't lose sight of that. We're talking about an even bigger subscription fee. And with this much of the boxing content ending up on one platform, it could actually limit its visibility, since it's not spread across several platforms. It's only available on one, to where if you don't have it, you don't know what the fuck's going on. So while it is true that every DAZN subscriber is likely there for boxing, there is a ceiling to how many subscribers they can get, how many people they can advertise these fights to. We'll see what happens. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, another refugee taking refuge on the DAZN platform, Matchroom specifically, former unified heavyweight champion Andy Ruiz has signed a promotional deal with Matchroom. Matchroom Boxing announced the multi-fight deal with a social media post on Wednesday. The Ring's Mike Coppinger reported that Ruiz is in discussions to face Damian Neba on September 4th in Newark, New Jersey. The bout has been paired with a middleweight clash between Austin Emma Williams and Vito Milnicki Jr., another recent signee to Matchroom. "I had to be broken to be reborn," Ruiz said in a video Matchroom shared to announce his signing. "I feel like right now I'm more strong mentally and physically, and I'm more hungry. I'm better than a lot of these other heavyweights that are out there right now. All the belts that everybody has, I want them. I want them back. I'm motivated, and I'm hungry from all the stuff that I've been through." Ruiz became the first heavyweight champion of Mexican descent with one of boxing's biggest upsets this century, stopping then unified and undefeated champion Anthony Joshua in June of 2019 at New York's MSG.
The only upset I can think of that was bigger than that one would have to be Mike Tyson's upset loss to Buster Douglas, but Anthony's upset to Ruiz, it's up there, oh yeah.
The Imperial California native lost by UD in the rematch 6 months later in Saudi. Inactivity has marred the 36-year-old's career since his two-fight series with Joshua. He's only fought 3 times, notching decision wins over Chris Arreola in 2021, Luis Ortiz in 2022. Ruiz most recently boxed to a controversial majority draw against Jarrell Miller 2 years ago in August of 2024, in a fight that most people thought Jarrell Miller won.
The gravy!
Big hungry.
Damian Niba of Poland is coming off a third-round stoppage defeat to recently upgraded WBC champion Agit Kabayel in January. The 6'7" heavyweight has fought much of his career in New York and New Jersey, where he currently resides.
Who does Andy Ruiz, now that he's signed to Matchroom, stand the best chance of winning a title from?
Not Frankie Sanchez. Frankie Sanchez can do to Andy Ruiz what Anthony Joshua did to him in the second fight. Stick and move, stay on the outside, and stay behind the straight punches. So Andy wouldn't win the IBF title from him. I don't think he wins the WBC title from Agit Kabayel either.
No, this division's bogeyman?
The bogeyman slayer, really, as he took on high-risk, low-reward opponents in succession in Zhilei Zhang, Arslanbek Makhmudov, then undefeated, and Frankie Sanchez, who I just mentioned, also undefeated. I don't think Andy beats him.
I don't think he beats Daniel Dubois either. Danny's retarded.
You fucking crazy? He bites into that yellow crayon? Nobody's safe, including Andy Ruiz. But Murat Gassiev of Russia, who right now is the only registered WBA champion at heavyweight, I would give Andy Ruiz decent odds against him, because Murat, like Andy, has very heavy feet. He's limited to boxing, mid-range to inside.
And tack on that Murat Gassiev is not that big a guy, not at heavyweight. He stands in at a very modest 6'2". Andy would actually be bigger than him.
So that if you can get Andy active again on a regular schedule of fights, you can build him up to a Murat Gassiev fight for the WBA title where he might actually win. In the exchange, anything can happen, and exchanging has always been Andy Ruiz's strong suit, that he's had very fast hands in the pocket for a man his size. If he can land, he can win.
You could also build up an Anthony Joshua trilogy. I've always felt there should have been a third fight between them because of how Andy won the first one and how AJ won the second. I think there's a need for a tiebreaker. I think that need has always been there, and I'd be interested in watching that.
Watching that rematch as well as a rematch with Jarrell Miller, their initial meeting ended in a draw.
There's a need for a tiebreaker, and so it would seem that Andy Ruiz has finally made himself useful to Matchroom, that's beefing up their heavyweight stable with familiar faces.
So now let's see how he makes out with Damian Niba.